worry, don't worry, it's all fine because here we go. Injecting Hope, the race for COVID-19 vaccine. If you were unconvinced about how fantastic COVID-19 vaccines have been, you just need to go to this event. It's being held at the Science Museum, and it's all about how do you develop a vaccine quickly and effectively to combat a global pandemic. And the really wonderful thing, and I hope everybody understands it, this little section is dripping with sarcasm, but the really wonderful thing about this event is that there is a centerpiece, a sculpture made of multiple layers of glass of a coronavirus for you to go and see, and you can see it in all its three-dimensional glory. It's going to be fantastic. Who's behind this? Well, it is the Wellcome Trust and also the Who family, well, Alex can correct me if I've pronounced that incorrectly, Family Foundation are the major funders for this. But it's not just for the UK, it's going other places as well. It's going to Delhi, it's going to China, it's going to other places, and it's all about injecting hope. So I hope everybody is suitably impressed.
Well, this is another psychological mind game. Debi's used the expression gaslighting twice, but we know that the government is using applied psychology to change the way people think and behave. And now we're seeing this spreading in all of the organisations connected with the government. Wellcome Trust is just one of many using these sorts of techniques.
But Alex, just very briefly, I mean, the thing that I suppose, most concerned about is this is being presented in the Science Museum as science. In fact, it is a total propaganda piece because it's all about building a narrative towards, well, Debi's going to come on to life sciences again in a little bit, but this is all about developing a market for the new generation of pharmaceuticals.
Yes, but the entire concept of not just the Science Museum, but all of those museums in South Kensington and in other parts of the country that focus on human progress, they've all fallen victim to it. Now, I know we get some flack by talking about this as being parts of cultural Marxism, but it does overlap or intersect, as they say these days, with critical race theory and all of this stuff. And I went there with my wife pretty recently, particularly to see, as she's a medic, those galleries, and they may have whisked them away in the meantime, but there was a display there on the yellow card scheme, its origins in the thalidomide scandal. But you could see that anything pre-90s, pre-2000 at most, was giving the facts about medical blunders and what we learned from them, and Britain's glorious heritage in benefiting the world in medical pioneering. From about 2000 onwards, it very much becomes selling the narrative, and there's very few sticklers of the history and philosophy of science left in the academic world who can tell this story, who are not in anyone's pocket. Just look at the disclosures of conflicts of interest in papers. In fact, we have an example of that coming up in another slide.
Okay, thank you. And Debi, let's come on to stillbirths.
Yeah, what I'm like with board meetings. So as well as the MHRA board meetings, and I would just like to hint to everybody, please could you keep clicking on the MHRA board meetings? Not as many people are viewing them. But I look at the NHS England board meetings too. This one took place in October 2022, so just last month. Now, on the right-hand side, that slide, you'll see that I've marked it with two arrows. You might not be able to see the names very clearly, but the first gentleman in the shot is the gentleman that you're just about to hear, and this is Professor Donald Peebles. He's consultant obstetrician at University College London. He's been Cambridge, etc. But you might also see another little red arrow, just the gentleman behind with white hair. That is Professor Munir Mohammed. And as you know, I have written to Professor Munir Mohammed for Commission of Human Medicines many times about the safety of the vaccines, especially with regards to pregnant women. So when I look at the board meetings, I like to take notes of what people say. And as Brian quite rightly said, you did mention, I keep mentioning the word gaslight, and I do. And you might be interested to know that as Merriam-Webster, it's the word of the year. It was 1,740% increased of lookups. What I think you're about to see now is a professor. I mean, this is subjective, so people will see different things in it. But what I'm seeing is a very experienced, in the know consultant obstetrician with a great interest in embryology, gaslighting the whole of the board by telling him what I believe to be misinformation. Have a little look at this. It's a very short segment.
It's good to see that smoking rates have come down, so they're at their lowest rate. But despite that, stillbirth rates, which have been falling year by year, and last year's data suggested we're meeting the national trajectory around halving stillbirths. This year, the data just out from ONS shows that they have increased. That increase has happened obviously at the peak time of COVID. I think we would be very cautious about identifying any particular cause of that increase in stillbirths. But of course, there is the effect of COVID itself, and then the access of mums to services as a result of COVID, women being anxious about coming into services. And we know that services were running at very, very depleted workforce levels. If that is all correct, then one would anticipate that the stillbirth rates will continue to fall in subsequent years. But I think we have to wait and see. And it does make us think about the importance of vaccination here and in this particular group, because it's mums who have severe COVID, and we know from last time round that those were the ones who were not vaccinated.
Thank you. Good.
Well, that's not true. We know that's not true. Did you hear anybody trying to challenge him? Did you hear Professor Munir Mohammed saying, well, there are some concerns over stillbirths, there are some concerns over the data that we're receiving, and have there been any long-term studies? And should we be giving anything to pregnant women? Absolutely not. And clearly from UK column yellow card data, and that links straight into the MHRA data, we're seeing a very different picture. We're also seeing that's the rise by the ONS on screen. And also, of course, you can see the fact checkers are really quick to come in. No, definitely not. Stillbirths have got nothing to do with the vaccinations. Of course not. So yet again, the NHS England board completely shut down. Everybody's nodding their heads when they're agreeing that pregnant women should be vaccinated. And I'm completely and utterly speechless, to be honest. But I just wanted to highlight those NHS England board meetings because those two are very interesting. We'll be seeing more of them in the future.
Okay, Debbie, thank you for that. Well, other people are clearly speechless, or at least speaking out. I just picked up on a couple of clips from social media. So the one on the left, if we bring it on screen, Justin Trudeau, it's safe, it's easy, it's free. Find out how you can keep your COVID-19 vaccinations up to date. But on the right, we're going in a different direction. We've got Christine Anderson saying this is how they're playing it now, ? US government posts study on official website which concludes adverse effects from mRNA injections due to stress caused by anti-vaxxers. Now, I took the trouble to follow that through, and we go to the US National Library of Medicine, and this report is absolutely real. COVID-19 vaccinations and the misinterpretation of perceived side effects, clarity on the safety of vaccines. And if we get into the abstract, which is what you can see easily on screen, you quickly find a statement where it's talking about stress and restriction of arteries. But the key bit is this. Therefore, if subjects are panicked, concerned, stressed, or scared of the vaccination, their arteries will constrict and become smaller in and around the time of receiving the vaccine. This biological mechanism, the constriction of veins, arteries, and vessels under mental stress, is the most likely cause for where there has been blood clots, strokes, heart attacks, dizziness, fainting, blurred vision, loss of smell and taste that may have been experienced shortly after vaccine administration. So the person could not believe that who tweeted this out. I can believe it because we're now starting to see desperate attempts to actually obfuscate the clear evidence showing the risks of vaccinations, but I have to say this one really takes the biscuit, Mike. And let's bring this one up on screen, and thank you very much to a UK column viewer for sending this through. It's the Telegraph from a few days ago. Pfizer's CEO wrapped by the regulator for making misleading statements about children's vaccines. And this is Dr. Albert Bourla, and he was commenting on schools. He said COVID in schools is thriving, adding this is disturbing significantly the educational system, and there are kids that will have severe symptoms. But basically, he was challenged over the statement that children's vaccines were safe, and this was described as disgracefully misleading. So it does appear that comment from the public and others is starting to hit home.
Yes. Okay. If you like what the UK column does and you would like to support us, please head over to community.ukcolumn.org. There are options to help us out there, or you could pick something up at the UK column shop, including a Christmas voucher, perhaps for a membership for a friend or family.
Very good idea.
But please do share material you find on the various platforms.
Okay, now once again we're reminding people that in France there's a lot of people doing their bit to warn about the dangers of COVID vaccinations. So we put up this poster for an event which is actually planned in a number of different areas across France on the 10th of December 2022. You can freeze your screen to have a look at some of the detail here. I was only able just to take a couple of short clips from their paperwork in English explaining what they're trying to do, but this is clearly a very laudable event where people are trying to get as much information out about potential dangers of vaccines as they can. So well done to the people in France.